Welcome and good evening if you're in New York City, and good morning if you're in Australia and every place in between. You know the purpose of this show, and that's to try and get the gals and guys together. And if you're a gal, go back to home economics. If you're a young gal and you're in a 1950s house and you have a budget, how much is that budget? What's it made of? How much is clothes? How much is piano lessons for the kids and tennis lessons for yourself? If you're going to do the producing, you do the consuming. How much is a budget? And if you're a guy, how many hours do you have to work to come up with that budget? If you have a job is something like a plumber or a carpenter, somebody who drives a truck. And a professional athlete is not a job. And there are rules of home economics. I was listening to a gal on the YouTube, and she was beside herself. She says, "How do you do it? I give up." She paid all her bills, and she has $200 a month left to spend on food. How in the world is she going to make it? And food and everything else after rent and cars and that sort of thing. The answer is she doesn't. It's not going to work out. There was a revolution in the 1970s. They pushed the United States and Western Europe into the consumption society, and now we're supposed to collapse and starve to death by the millions. And then they never really say what comes after that. So let's stop it. Have a talk about home economics. Home economics is the opposite of poverty. There's poverty, and then to get you out of poverty, there's home economics, the household unit. The 10-year-olds can't pay for their mommies. Mommies can't take care of their kids and go work in the factory, and the guy can't go work in the factory and run the household. And so the guy and gal are viewed as a single entity. And virtues is the word. And then they practice home economics as household unit. So picture a house from the 1950s, United States. There's a house. Then go off to the side. And at the bottom, start with farming and mining. Then above that, manufacturing. Then above that, wholesale, retail, and repair. And above that, retirement, education, and recreation. And doctors and lawyers form a kind of ladder that holds it all together. And it's the priest that causes it to come into being to begin with. It's a religious thing. It comes out of popes and monks and monasteries. It's the other intellectual position. It needs a religious thing, so to speak, that added thing you have to have in order to be normal and well adjusted. Being normal is not a natural thing. It's an unnatural thing. You're a pervert if you're normal. And so we've been hoping to try and get somebody to listen and somebody to start chatting. I live in wherever you live. These are my bills. I'm not going to come close to making ends meet. But there's a house for sale, and it's a 1950s house. It's very intentionally designed to get people out of poverty. This is a mortgage. These are the bills I think I would have if I had 2.2 children, as they used to say. And then if you're a guy, this is how much money I make. If I tried to come up with that kind of budget, I would have to work how many hours? And if you could come up with that, if you could come up with those numbers, you'd be in seventh heaven. We would be in business. So I'm hoping somebody will start to listen to this stuff and chat in or pass the word so that somebody will hear this and it'll hit home with them. Just so I said, it comes 4 o'clock here in Tucson, where this is coming from. And tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock Tucson, I guess that's 12 o'clock New York's time and 9 o'clock LA time, 5 o'clock in Great Britain. So if you would pass the word and join the gang, and then you can do something. If you know where we are, you know where you need to go, you can go from too. It is a strange thing. The definition of mental illness is the normal taken into the abnormal, from a cold to the flu to pneumonia. The Catholics, the God and Country crowd, will say, hold on, go backwards. From pneumonia to the flu, back to a cold and a normal, and normal is normal, but not good enough. Sex is the easiest way to see it. A young man sits there and he closes his eyes and he fantasizes about sex, and he realizes, and then he stops what he's doing, open your eyes, do it again, only this time you're trying to get the gal pregnant. You're associating these very powerful thoughts in your mind with actually getting the gal pregnant. It's what it's there for. And then you realize that's not a natural thing at all. And with a snap of a finger, you see what original sin is. In the if you add to that an argument of decency, you make money by making the other person better off, and you have some missing thing there. Aristotle and Plato and all those Socrates, all those guys, they would say, well, this is the right thing to do. This is how you become a normal, well-adjusted person, a normal society. You become a good person, then a good husband, and then it spills into home economics, and you get on. That's how you have a huge middle class. But there's some missing thing there. When Christ rose onto the third day, what changed? Well, that missing thing was fulfilled. And so you hold that as religion, that part of it. And now you head into society. Now you're a normal, well-adjusted person, as close as a human being is going to get, which isn't very close. You will the good of another person. You take the leadership style of washing the feet of the apostles, and then you have life is just a question of home economics, and it spills into home economics. That's how you get people out of poverty and into plenty. So there's straightening up your emotions, willing the good of another person, and doing it because Christ rose on the third day. And those three things make up God and country. We had them. The United States was there. After World War II, you were a professional person, and you were the ideal man and the ideal woman. And they threw that all out. It culminated in the 1970s in the United States and Western Europe. The communists in the 1950s said they would overthrow the United States around about 1973, and there was a revolution in 1973. Went from home economics to individual rights. They pushed us into a consumption society. They threw out God. You could no longer have religion and government. They threw out the idea of being a Yank. Can't be a Yank without Christ. You can't be a Yank without being Catholic. So be Catholic and shut up about it and be a Yank, and they wouldn't do that. So they threw out religion. They also threw out being a Yank. If you point out that that's the stereotypical classical definition of a satanic church, and that is a religion, well, they just smile and say, hey, we fooled you. We're in our 80s. We got away with it. And you guys are going to starve and die. You'll crash as a society, starve and die. And it looks like that's the way it is. If you don't at least try and do something about it, nothing's going to get done. You can look back to the 1970s, and there's Jane Fonda and Angela Davis, and all the musical groups, and the idea of getting into all the golden real estate you can possibly get your hands on. You don't need to go out and put somebody in their own house. You can work and get the wife to work, and at that one brief moment, the husband's still paying the gas and electric bill, and so that gal's income is added income. And they had a change of attitude. They're very malicious. So instead of putting you in your own house, they would buy, say, a duplex, get somebody else to pay for their mortgage. The problem with that is when they build a duplex, the price of houses go up, and it pushes the people at the very bottom of that huge middle class into a class of poverty. And they're the ones that start to become a class of peasantry. And right there is that split, the thin edge of a wedge. It started around the 70s in the United States for real, and you can just see the lazy V. Instead of making money by making people better off by a sense of subsidiary, They made money even though it caused other people to have to work more hours. I don't know how to explain the attitude to somebody who's 25 years old, but you couldn't go into court and say, look how malicious these guys are. You're paying the price for it. You're either living in the foothills and you'll keep it up till the dollar is useless and our society crashes, or you're just living in poverty. And it's going to get worse. So you can do something about it. You can go to those courts and say, from now on, it's a blatantly Catholic religion. I shall dot the letter I. I shall straighten myself emotionally. It feels horrible. It feels like you're getting into some sort of rigid dictatorial position. In a way you are, but it doesn't last very long. Then you realize you're just being normal, and a human being isn't naturally normal. And well, once you get through that part, you're okay. And so in court, you go to the court and you tell the courts we're now a Catholic country. I'm sure they'll agree. Then you have the grand deduction. Society is made up of our citizenry, race relegated to an endearing quality of your parents. A man is a man, a woman is a woman. These thoughts that have to do with sex have to do with getting a gal pregnant. You become a good husband and a good father if you're a guy, and it spills into home economics. And you make money by making people better off, and you're there. In home economics, picture the guy there are rules. The same guy who does the producing does the consuming. The gal did the overwhelming majority of consumption in the 1950s when they were getting good at this. And so you ask the gal, say what kind of couch do you want? And all of the farming and mining goes in, and all of the manufacturing, all of the stores and the advertising, everything's geared towards getting that gal what she wants. Excuse me. As long as the people that do the producing, do the consuming, as long as they practice virtues and will the good of another person, life becomes good. It was an expression in the 1950s. Your kids are cheap in the sense that it didn't take much money to put shoes on their feet. That's completely opposite now. Like I said, if you arrange the parameters of competition so that there'll be a large middle class, there'll be a large middle class. If you breed a breed of normal, well-adjusted people, you'll start to have a breed of normal, well-adjusted people. You can also go the other way. When it was their choice, when it was Harry the Hippies and Al the Afros and Donna the Feminist, when it was their choice, all they had to do was either get onto a maintenance level, or they could cash in on it all, move into the foothills, and become the upper class in a peasant to property class society. They chose the latter. And we're paying a horrible price for it. I just heard something on the computer. They were saying that Donald Trump had placed tariffs on China, but it simply didn't work. That's not Donald Trump's fault. China literally enslaved a whole generation of people in the 1970s. And the same people that were protesting things like the war in Vietnam and all the communists, they're the people who cashed in on it all. I remember that from my school days. See, you have a piece of paper, it's called a dollar. You give them $1, they give you a television set, and so you in effect own it. There's quite a bum's rush there. Now take a look at the people who are doing that. That's Jane Fonda and Angela Davis and Bill Clinton, the white guys, the Black Civil Rights Movement, the Chicano men. They're all the same group. Now China is very horrible, very large, and they didn't join the gang in the playground. They didn't just sort of dissolve and join us and we were all one happy group. They Darwinized, they became far more ruthless, and they're going to get worse. If you think they're going to be nice, when they get bigger than the United States, when the United States can't afford a military and they can dominate us and the rest of the world, it's not going to happen. The rules are, if I heard them right, they'll depopulate the world by 0.7%. And it looks like there's something to that. And somebody did build an economic system above our military, and it's hellacious. It is going to turn into a nightmare. You can do something about it. You can join our gang, hopefully. You have to start by putting numbers to this. What's wrong? They threw out those three things that make up God and country. What do you do about it? Well, you straighten yourself up emotionally and you go back to home economics. The first thing you have to do is publicize it. You have to learn to be a normal, well-adjusted person. You have to publicize that. And you become a professional person, so to speak. And that said, that's enough of this. Somebody better start manning up around here. You're going to have to face this kind of Darwin violence. It's the hardest kind of violence a human being can face. Most people would, if they had the talent, would go become a Army Special Forces guy or a social worker guy, rather than stand up to this stuff. And you're just going to have to face up to it. So if you're a gal and you're one of those gals you see on TikTok or YouTube, and you're just complaining, what am I going to do? Please tell me what to do. Well, I hope you'll hear this, and I hope you'll join this gang. Somebody, maybe a university, stopped by a house from the 1950s, and you won't be able to look it up. You should. You need a living room that's about 12 by 20 feet, maybe a bedroom that's 10 by 12 feet that can hold 2 boys or 2 girls, a backyard that's such and such. You get an idea. How do you get people out of poverty to in a world of plenty? Not overdoing it, but certainly not skimping on it. That's the opposite. This house is the opposite of communist housing projects and apartments. Did you realize that? These houses, these apartments, these housing projects have somebody else up here, the communist intelligentsia. They don't live in housing projects. They live very high off the hog. These people who live in suburbia America might have a doctor and lawyer's house. They might be nicer than, but they're the same thing, only a little nicer. That's completely different. Just to point out something, when middle-class America exists, this class of communist intelligentsia can't exist. They're competing. When this class of university communist intelligentsia appear, poverty appears. When these middle-class America appears, poverty disappears, but these guys can't appear. And there's a conflict between these two. And you just have to publicize it. Maybe you can go, if you're an Ivy League or university type, go ask a university professor why you're such a communist and what you have to say about the huge military the Chinese have, and Putin and all these other places. Drugs, the Navy has Navy destroyers and airplanes going up against drug cartels. Remember in the 1970s, drugs were the victimless crime. It didn't bother them. They had all the sex and drugs they could possibly get their hands on. You and I starve because of it. Well, let's go back to you. The one gal was complaining she had a boyfriend, and they skip a meal. They only have one meal a day, or they skip dinner so they could have some lunch the next day, and their 2 incomes just aren't going to make it. And that's very true. If you did a few things right off the bat, tell Donald Trump to cover his ears. We owe him about $1 billion. But that said, here in Tucson, some guys came in and bought 1,000 houses and turned it into rental property. We're a bunch of Yanks here, remember? We don't rent property from people to people. We don't rent property from people. We put ourselves in our own house. It's called subsidiary. You reduce things to its smallest economic things, household unit. So if that couple we were just talking about, I wonder if they deducted the rent, if they would have some more money. If they deducted childcare, if you're a child person, you have to come up with, around here in Tucson, just close to $1,000. I think it's $900 or something a month for the average in Tucson for childcare. If you didn't have to pay childcare, if you were a home economist, well, there's 2 incomes right there. In Tucson, it's about $1,600 a month for the smallest apartment you can buy or rent, and about $900 for health care. If there's any rent money, it should be going to you for a mortgage. Take it from there. In order to do that, well, you have to have a husband and you have to have that other set system. It's very doable. It's just how do you stand up to a bum's rush? And so if you're that gal, I hope you'll call in. We've been on for about 20 minutes or so. We're sort of passing the word. So I hope someone will hear this. And I hope you'll call in and say, okay, enough is enough. This is how much money I need to make. These are my bills. And if I had a budget, no, excuse me, no food stamps and no Section 8 housing in the United States, you just shut up. You be quiet and come across with a credit card. I'll be a professional person, then a professional housewife. And I'll make sure the kids get to school and everything. And once the kids are in school, it's my turn to recreate. The housewife has a different working life than a guy. She gets to go play in that silly tennis tournament at the country club. Okay, you guys, I hope you pass the word. I hope someone will hear this and start calling in. Well, I'll see you tomorrow. Sunday morning at noon, New York time, and at 9 o'clock LA time. Okay, well, thank you. We hope to see you.